Welcome, everybody. My name is Adam Hopler with the law firm of Hopler, Williams, and Hanna. You are on a webinar for the fundamentals of estate planning and investing. Today, I've got with me Maria Litzinger from Edward Jones. Maria, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. Today we're going to just run through some basic topics about, again, estate planning, financing, investing. Maria is going to give us some overall perspective on financial advising and kind of what she does and helping folk through that. And once she hits on that broad topic, I'll pick up there, talk a little bit about legal forms that can help to complement that conversation. But Maria, why don't we just start? If you can maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam. So thanks everyone for attending today. It's great to have everyone here. Again, my name is Maria Litzinger. I'm a financial advisor and accredited asset management specialist with Edward Jones. My office is down in Apex, North Carolina, but my clients are all across the U.S. And prior to becoming a financial advisor with Edward Jones, I feel like I have a bit of a unique perspective, as my husband and I were clients with the firm for over 10 years. And so I really know it from the client side. And I really come from a place of loving to help people, loving to help solve problems, strategize, and really within that financial realm. And so for me, this was a natural fit whenever I became an advisor. So I have a long-standing relationship with Edward Jones, both as a client and as a financial advisor. And you really love helping people put together plans for their financial future.
Excellent. Yeah, very good. Well, Maria, I guess I thank you so much. Yeah, I guess I'll introduce myself before I forget that nicety, and also take a moment to make a comment to those of you who are participating. We have several folk that are observing, that aren't necessarily able to interact with each other, but there is a chat box in which you can jump on and you can make comments. It is moderated, but generally speaking, if you have thoughts about anything that Maria and I say throughout our conversation today, you can chime in and throw those up there. If you have questions, please feel free to throw those up again in the chat box. We will try to take some time at the end to address questions that have been put up there. So please, by all means, take advantage of that opportunity throughout so that we can do what we can to aid those who are here, and then also others that for posterity maybe listen in on this later. They will be able to benefit from the answers to your questions. But yeah, I am Adam Hopler, an attorney with the law firm of Hopler, Williams, and Hanna. I've been in practice since 2011. Pretty much entirely focused or primarily focused in what would refer to as estate planning. I do some forms of litigation, guardianship work, things of that sort that relate to estate planning. I'm in Durham, North Carolina, but like Maria, my practice is not necessarily limited to that area. I do a lot with the surrounding counties, so can advise and consult certainly across the board on all of that. My wife and I have been married since 2006. We have way too many children. We're coming up on 6 in November, but it keeps life fun and interesting. Again, looking forward to kind of hearing from your questions as we go forward. But with that, Maria, I guess we'll jump right in here. If you can, tell us a little bit about, addressing these kind of foundational financial risk. What it is that you do as an advisor to help folk in planning for what may be arguably more important than what I do, but I guess that depends on perspective. But take it away.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so today, even though I am a financial advisor and I help a lot in terms of investing and strategy with that, when Adam and I were talking about today's topic, I really wanted to broaden the focus because finances cover so much more than just that. And so I thought I'd talk again a little bit more broadly about things. And as you all know, most events in life do require a bit of planning and preparation. For example, if you're getting married, having a baby, changing jobs, even something as simple as going on vacation can require a plan, especially when you have kids. And to use that example of a trip a bit more, really being prepared is a way to deal with the unexpected. After all, nobody wants to go on vacation and spend that valuable time repurchasing items you might have forgotten to pack at home. So really, you can't guarantee everything is going to go smoothly during your trip, but you can take the necessary steps to ensure you're prepared if the unexpected occurs. So to illustrate that a little bit further, I'll tell you a little bit about a family going on vacation. So we've got Jennifer and Tom Williams. They have 4 children, 1 daughter, 3 sons, ranging in age from 5 to 14 years old. They live several hours away from their favorite beach spot, but they make the trek every year. And last year was no different. With the plans they made, the family loaded into their van and headed out. The first half of their trip was smooth. Jennifer was driving. Tom decided to take a nap. Just as he was about to fall asleep, Tom was jolted awake because the van had hit something in the road, and it appeared that debris had fallen off of a truck. Jennifer was able to maneuver around the debris and safely pull over to the side of the road. Everyone had been wearing their seatbelts, and everybody was safe. But when they looked at the vehicle to inspect the damage, they saw that the front left tire had a large gash in it. So Tom goes around to get the spare tire in the jack, and then he remembers something, that last night when they were packing, he had removed the spare with the intention of checking it over before putting it back in the van, but he had forgotten. So fortunately, they did have a roadside assistance program, and with a quick call, they were able to get the truck serviced and back on the road, and were just a little bit delayed in their plan. In this situation, the family's pre-planning helped ensure their vacation stayed on track despite the challenges they faced. Similarly, the steps that you take to prepare for the unexpected things in life can protect your family's future financial well-being. I often say that we can't predict, but we can prepare. And since an unexpected event can completely derail your financial strategy, part of providing for your family's future is developing a proactive strategy to make sure that you have the financial resources if something happens to you. Your goals and the goals of everyone on this call may be different. That's why, as a financial advisor and talking with my clients, I start by learning what's important to you. And I use an established process to help you build personalized strategies to achieve your goals, and partner with you through your lifetime to help you stay on track. A financial advisor can help you decide the best solutions and strategies to help you work toward your goals. Knowing more about the solutions and strategies available to you can help you make more informed decisions about where your money is going and what it's doing for you. And preparing for the unexpected, whether it be providing for your family or protecting what you've achieved, are the primary financial needs that tend to rise to the top for my clients. Once you've set a strategy, you can stay on track by periodically evaluating where you are, whether you've reached your goals, and what new goals you'd like to achieve. Is your current strategy still working for you, or are there some adjustments that you can make? It's also important to note that each element of your strategy should help you plan for the expected, prepare for the unexpected, and position your portfolio for both expected and unexpected life changes. Life is full of the unexpected. We're living through one of those times right now. A job loss, prolonged illness, or the unexpected loss of a family member can profoundly impact your family and your financial situation. So by preparing for the unexpected, you'll put yourself in a better position to keep your overall strategy from veering off course. So today, the main things that I'd like to cover are some risks that you may or may not be aware of, some strategies for addressing those risks, what the process looks like for my clients, and the types of life changes that may indicate a need for a review. So to get us ready, let's take a quick informal quiz that has absolutely nothing to do with finance. And I'm not going to ask you to share your answers publicly, but if you can privately consider your answers to this preparedness quiz, I promise it'll have a tie back into finance in just a moment. So first question in the quiz. Consider, do you have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen? Do you know where the tire jack is for your spare tire? For the smoke alarms in your house, have you checked the batteries or the functionality of them within the last 6 months? Do you have a first aid kit at home, and can you find it in under a minute? What about an emergency preparedness kit? Do you have an emergency preparedness kit for power outages, storms, etc.? And if so, have you checked that in the past year? So hopefully between those 5 questions, you're feeling pretty good. Hopefully most of them, you've at least said, yes, I know exactly where those are. I feel pretty good. Now, think about your finances for a moment. If I were to ask you those same types of questions about your financial situation, would you feel as confident? Now, it's important to note, I'm not asking about how much money you have. I'm asking if you feel prepared for the potential financial impact of unexpected events in your life. When I work with my clients, I'm helping them develop a strategy to help achieve their financial goals. My goal is not only to help them get on track, but also to help ensure that life's unexpected events don't derail what they worked so hard to achieve. Remember, your strategy is not complete unless you've prepared for the unexpected. And that means addressing some basic key risks that it can impact your strategy. Some of these risks are ever present, regardless of your life stage. And we can prepare for these by having items such as an emergency fund. Others are going to evolve over time as your life and your needs change. For example, as you prepare for retirement, your focus may be on having items in place to provide for your family should something happen to you, such as life insurance and disability insurance. But as you near retirement, this focus may shift to income replacement and protecting your assets against risks to ensure your money can provide for your retirement needs for as long as you need it. For the purposes of today's discussion, we'll focus on the risks and needs as you are still preparing for retirement. But if you're interested in learning more about how to protect what you've worked for as you enter retirement, or about asset transfer and planning for your estate, we can definitely talk after the seminar and provide different guidance and resources for you. So let's go back to that fire extinguisher that we talked about just a couple of minutes ago. Many of you will have that already in your kitchen because you never know if or when a fire can start. But if it does, you need to have quick access to a ready charged extinguisher to put it out. And you need to have the right type of extinguisher. For example, you're going to need a different method to put out a grease fire versus an electrical fire. Similarly, you need to be prepared in case of a financial fire. That can be caused by an unexpected job loss, a significant house repair, or really any number of other life events. So with that in mind, let's discuss 4 ways you can address foundational risk. The first one being to fortify your emergency fund. If you haven't started one, take the steps to set one up. The amount you should have in your emergency fund depends on where you are in your life. If you're still working, you'll want to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved. If you're getting ready to start retirement, you'll want to have up to 12 months saved. Remember, your goal is to have these savings within easy access if you need them. The emergency fund is your last line of defense, in other words, a financial fire extinguisher, ensuring you don't need to touch your longer-term assets, such as your retirement accounts, in a time of need. Secondly, consider establishing a line of credit. In much the same way as a smoke detector, a line of credit can help expand that last line of defense for you before having to dip into your investments. So a personal line of credit can supplement your emergency savings if needed. Next, review your asset and liability protection. If you have a mortgage, you likely have homeowners insurance. If you rent, you may have renter's policies. These policies offer a range of protections and features, including replacement costs for lost and stolen property. There may also be additional liability insurance to consider, such as umbrella liability protection, depending on your assets and your specific needs. Do you understand the protection and features your policies offer? Are you carrying enough coverage? These are really things to consider. Be sure to be reviewing your policies regularly, especially if you've experienced a significant life event that may impact your coverage needs. Fourth, address investment risks. While the market ups and downs may attract the most attention, the way you react to these declines may be the biggest risk to your strategy. One of our key goals is to help you make sure your investments and your investment allocations remain in line with your goals and your tolerance for risk. A properly constructed portfolio helps address some of these risks. Your portfolio should generally include a diversification of your investments among stocks, bonds, and cash, so success isn't tied to one company or one kind of investment. A makeup of quality investments with proven track records, a focus on your long-term goals, not on short-term fluctuations, and a determination of how much risk you are willing and able to take in advance. Hopefully, this approach will help temper emotional responses to inevitable market fluctuations. Each of these recommendations is meant to address certain financial risks regardless of your life stage. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, the way you prepare for the unexpected may change as you move through your career, grow your family, acquire more assets, or move toward retirement. With that in mind, let's talk about some strategies to consider if you are early or in your mid-career. Caring for children or aging parents, paying a mortgage or other loans, saving for retirement, or planning to pay for a child's education. At this stage in your life, providing for your family's future is often the overriding focus. In other words, you are currently more likely to be focused on growing assets while you move closer to retirement. As you get much closer to retirement, your focus may shift to preserving the assets you've accumulated so you can pass them to your loved ones. So for this part in your life, preparing for the unexpected really means finding ways to replace your income in the event of death or long-term disability. Death and disability are uncomfortable topics to discuss, but ignoring them could lead to a much more uncomfortable situation for your loved ones. You wouldn't shy away from making sure that you have a spare tire just because the thought of a flat tire is unpleasant. So these are basic tools that you hope you never have to use, but that you have because you don't want to be caught off guard. No one likes to think about these risks, but it doesn't make them any less real. In terms of insurance, your death or long-term disability could leave your family without the ability to cover your financial obligations. In much the same way, insurance can potentially help prepare for two of life's most difficult possibilities. Life and disability insurance are potential solutions to help address these risks by providing income and resources for your loved ones. Life insurance can be used to replace the potential lost income for your family in the case of an unexpected death, whereas disability insurance can be used to provide income replacement if you are out of work because of illness or injury. Many of you may already have some form of both of these insurances, either individually purchased or through an employer. But there are two important considerations. First one being, how often should you review your policies? And secondly, how much coverage do you need? In terms of how often you should review, I recommend that you review your insurance coverage every 3 years at a minimum, as well as after any significant life event, like marriage, birth of children. Each of these life events can not only change how much coverage you need, but also provide an opportunity to determine if newer insurance policy options may be better suited to your needs, and to make sure that you have the right beneficiaries on your policies. As far as how much coverage you need, there are different ways to calculate that. I do recommend working with your financial advisor to determine your needs, but as a rule of thumb, you can use a multiple of income approach, which is generally 7 to 10 times your current pre-tax salary, or a needs approach. So here at Edward Jones, we use the acronym LIFE as a guide, where we review liabilities, income needs, final expenses, and education costs to really encapsulate all of the things that are important to you and making sure that you have the right coverage amount in place. Often the risk of long-term disability is overlooked by individuals, but when it comes to providing for your family, it is an important consideration not to be forgotten. For disability insurance, you may want to consider purchasing an individual plan or supplementing your existing employer plan to cover as much of your after-tax income as possible to last you until you reach age 65. So as noted earlier, be sure you understand the protection and features your policies offer and review the coverage amounts minimally every 3 years or whenever you've experienced a significant life event that may impact your coverage needs. In the end, all of this preparation for the unexpected is really about protecting the ones you care about and taking steps to make sure that the strategy you're using to pursue your long-term financial goals doesn't get derailed. Making decisions about how to deal with unexpected events before they happen gives you the power to choose. If you choose not to decide, someone else will be making those decisions, and they may not necessarily reflect your wishes. So a couple of important considerations that you may need to address are, if something were to happen to me, who would care for our children? And if I was to pass away or was unable to make decisions due to incapacity, what would happen to our assets and resources? The solutions will depend on your specific situation, but again, a proactive approach puts you in control. And that's why it's important to work with your team of tax professionals and legal professionals like Adam to make arrangements regarding guardianship, as well as how medical and legal decisions will be made if you are unable to do so. Adam and his team do an amazing job of listening to their clients' needs and crafting the right planning documents based on your individual needs. So at this time, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Adam so that he can talk about his part of financial planning.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maria. I wanted to go back real quick. These were the hypothetical questions that you had asked about, like, do you have a fire extinguisher? Can you find your spare tire, smoke detector? What was your number 4 on that list? I'm sorry.
The first aid kit. Can you find your first aid kit?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. And I'm just going to make a note. I was putting some little chats up here on the side, little notes here and there, just so folks could kind of follow along. But yeah, those are some really great analogies in terms of understanding that life events are those things that are unanticipated. We don't see them coming. And so by definition, you can't really be prepared except to just think them through and trying to have these fail safes in place. And so, yeah, legally, we have a number of different documents that would work in terms of supplementing the hard work that you do in setting people up for financial success. and making sure that that doesn't come crumbling apart because of something unanticipated. And so while there are certainly, as you mentioned, life insurance policies, lines of credit, general savings that can help in forestalling that. There are definitely some life events like incapacity and certainly death that would have a radical shakeup that may not necessarily be fixed by those things. So what I'm going to kind of go through here today in terms of estate planning documents, as you can see here, is a last will and testament. We'll talk about how that's applicable, where that comes into play, a living trust, how that's different from a last will and testament. And then I'm going to talk about two kinds of power of attorney. There's a durable general, which I'll kind of give a general reference as a financial power of attorney. We don't officially use that, but that's essentially what we're talking about. And then we have a healthcare power of attorney, and that is what we generally call that. And then finally, we'll talk about, again, the word living gets thrown around, but a living will or an advanced directive might be a more helpful name for that. So talking about a last will and testament, this is most definitely something that comes into play when a person passes away. The document does not have any real legal bearing as long as you are alive. So this is most definitely something that you draft and you tuck it away. But it gives instructions for primarily all of your assets, things that you own, personal. We use the word real to describe land and houses, but real property. And so whether it's land, property, or everything else, personal property, you can designate that in your will. It's pretty customary for folk to do general statements of, I want percentages, 100%, 50% to go here and to go there, but you can do specific divises for certain assets. That can get cumbersome though when you only have, or when you don't really know what you're going to have at the end of days. And so that is what you're primarily doing, but we're also giving instructions for how to handle money if it's going to be used for a minor. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. The word when you have a trust inside of a last will and testament is a testamentary trust. But the idea is using money for the benefit of someone else, but trusted to someone different. You will name an executor in this document, and that person is essentially the puppeteer, if you will. You're going to set up instructions, and they're going to actually see this document through. They're going to make sure that what you've said happened actually happens. It's enforceable by law, but we need a person to be the eyes and the ears of the estate, your estate, or your loved ones if they're the ones drafting the document. And as Maria mentioned, this is a place where you would designate caregivers, guardians for your minor children. So if you have children under the age of 18, that's our cutoff for guardianship. Then you could designate for them somebody who would jump in and be their caretaker. So that's real brief overall on what you're doing in a last will and testament. And so it's important to have one of these because this is your opportunity really to tell us what you want to see happen. And so as Maria was saying, we don't know what life throws at us. And so if your spouse passes, you want to make sure that you at least understand what's going to happen to things if you don't have a will in place, or if you do. Many folk don't understand or know that things are not automatically given in their entirety to your spouse. Your stuff is usually split between spouse and children, or if your parents are living, between your spouse and your parents. That can be a jarring realization. If your spouse passes away, you've not had any conversation about this, and you did not have any kind of a last will and testament to modify that. So that's just, again, a very quick first step analysis that you're going to do when you sit down with an attorney is talking about, well, what's normal for me? And is that what I want? And if it's not, can we change that? Yes. And how? And so we discuss what makes sense for you. I will sometimes hear folks say, oh, well, I'm a single individual. I don't have a spouse. I don't have children. And so everything is very simple for me. And that's true. It is very simple for you. It, however, is incredibly complex for everyone else. Because if you don't have a spouse and you don't have children, you're going to look somewhere, and somebody is going to be your heir or heirs, and we need to figure that out. And so almost by necessity, we start talking about involving an attorney just to figure that question out. I've had situations where we have literally dozens of cousins who are heirs of an individual who was not married, did not have children. And so you don't want to make the assumption that things are easy just because they appear like, well, I know where everything I want to go, or I know who my immediate heir apparents are. Those kinds of assumptions can be dangerous, and they may be correct, but again, it can be very helpful to sit down and just make sure. So that's what you're doing with a last will and testament, taking your time to figure out how are we going to move forward in that kind of an unanticipated circumstance. So really, this document is less about you and more about everybody else around you. So compare that to a living trust. So we talked briefly about testamentary trust, but a living trust is a document that you can go ahead and set up while you're alive, and essentially you put assets into it right away. Now, this is very similar in thought to a business. If you were to establish a business, you would give that business a name. That business would be able to go up and open a bank account in the name of the business. And money that you put in that account would not belong to any one person. It would belong to the business itself. And so the partners or board members, they might have control collectively, but it's not any single one of them that has ownership. It's this business. The trust is very similar in that regard, in that we're creating essentially a separate entity that's going to hold things. There can be lots of reasons why you might do that. Some of those that are put up here can be avoiding probate, maintaining privacy. And by avoiding probate, we mainly mean making probate a lot simpler. We never truly avoid probate, but we can make it easier if we don't have stuff that's in your name. It's in the name of a trust that doesn't die. So what we get to do is like you would with a business. Instead of shutting the business down and starting from scratch, we would just change CEOs. We put a new person in charge. So that's our trustee. And that's what you get the opportunity to do in a document like this one, is to say, if I can no longer manage my stuff, I'm going to have this individual. It could be a spouse, it could be a parent, it could be a trusted friend, an advisor, but you get to name that person who gets to be your successor trustee, and maybe their successor trustee, and on and on. You get to decide who benefits from the things that you put inside of this. So this can have a very targeted focus. I want to trust specifically for real property, for instance, or it can have a very general. I want my trust to manage all things that are in it. And that could be life insurance proceeds down the road, retirement benefits, general personal assets, bank accounts. So there's not a whole lot of limitation on what you can put into the trust. But then you tell us, what do you want to do with it in these various circumstances? Maria had mentioned incapacity. If you get injured, again, an unanticipated circumstance, and you're not able to manage your stuff, that could be a trigger if you have things in a living trust for another trustee to step in. That could be a spouse again, or some other trusted individual that you name. But now that person, without having to go in front of a court or otherwise try and petition or establish a basis, they have already the legal authority to begin managing the assets, the things that you put inside of that trust. So this living document gives us a little more flexibility. it can also help us deal with things like minor issues. And I guess I don't mean like small issues. I just mean like little people. So you're talking about children, right, who are under the age of 18. If you have kids and you're not really sure like how they're going to turn out, maybe you have some questions, they seem like they're on the right track, but you're just not sure. And most of us kind of cock our heads at teenagers. We just don't know what to expect out of them. You may be thinking, I should have some guidelines for this individual. And so I may say, I'm going to allow for educational expenses to be paid out from this particular fund for my children up until the age of, could be 21, 25. Maybe you're in line with hobbits from Lord of the Rings, 33, whatever you think the age of responsibility is. And off you go. And so now that trust will have some level of control over assets that go to a child, whether you're incapacitated or doing just fine, or if, heaven forbid, you pass away. So you could probably have a lot of conversation with an attorney about a trust and why you might want one and how it might benefit you. They're not for everybody, but they do have different applications and potential for use. And certainly they can help you from a standpoint of protection, of giving you options in the unanticipated circumstances, because literally what you're going to do with an attorney is talk about, okay, if this worst case scenario occurs, what do we do? And almost that thought process in and of itself is as much benefit as anything else. But of course, you want to finish the process and get it down onto paper, because all the planning in the world won't do you much good if you don't ultimately get that stuff scribbled down and executed properly in the right way. And let's see here. So we also mentioned powers of attorney. And I think for the discussion about powers of attorney, it can be helpful to compare this to guardianship. So in a very fundamental way, all of us as human beings, Americans, whatever, we really like to focus in on our rights and privileges and where they come from. But generically, all human beings have the ability to make decisions for themselves, make decisions about where they eat, what they eat, where they live, what kinds of things that they own, the medical care, treatment that we get. And so we might refer generally to kind of decisions about a person to be healthcare or just of the person. And that's like one category of decisions that we make. But we also have this category of the things around you, your assets, your financial decision. So this first durable general power of attorney addresses that, the things that are in your control. So if you hear someone talking about a durable general power of attorney, primarily they're talking about financial asset management. This is not usually, and depending, can be varied by state and the specific document, but usually it's not actually talking about healthcare decision. That's a different one that we'll get to in a second. And so in this document, the durable general power of attorney, you get the opportunity to designate a person to jump into your shoes in the instance that you are incapacitated. This document would not do you any good or anybody any good if you passed away. That's where your last will and testament comes into play. So you cannot have power of attorney over a deceased individual. That's an important thing to realize, because sometimes people don't necessarily pick up on that and they continue to act. But that's another story. So if you are incapacitated, you can't make your own decisions. That's where this would primarily come into play. Technically speaking, though, and usually we see this with spouses, but and other trusted relationships, but we oftentimes set this document up to be a current existing authority. That is, the moment you sign the document, it gives so-and-so, your agent that you designate under that power of attorney, the ability to begin managing your assets. So clearly this is a document designed for a relationship of trust. It is not something that you take lightly. But it's a significant advantage that you get in making that decision, and you specifically saying who's going to do it and giving that authority out, because not having this document in place means that if you become incapacitated, we no longer have any other option except to go to a court of law for guardianship. because you can't execute a document after you're incapacitated, right? So you have to have this plan in place before that occurs. Otherwise, you can't utilize it. You can't get power of attorney for someone else. I hear people say that a lot. I want to get power of attorney over my mother or my sister or whatever the case is. And what they're really talking about when people say that is they want to go get guardianship. They want to ask for the ability to manage somebody else's affairs. So this document ideally will help avoid court interaction, cost, fees, bonding, accounting, at least in that official sense. The document usually will maintain requirements that a agent under this authority still has to account. They still have to keep track of what they're doing. They need to be able to justify their behavior and show how it was in the benefit of the principal, you, the person who executed the document. But they don't automatically have to go in front of a court on a regular basis and incur cost in doing so to run the show, so to speak, to be able to manage. And so again, we come back to that position of trust. So if you have the fortune of a person in your life that you know will be there for you, can stand up, then you want to authorize them. You want to empower them to do that, because as much as you might trust them and as much as they might be willing, if they don't have the authority because you gave it to them willingly, they have no choice but to go to a court and essentially demand of it in a public forum. That can involve a lot of privacy issues, discussion of your medical circumstances on a public forum before a court of law. Why are you incapacitated? How did that happen? What's the situation? Where are you at? How are you being treated? So that the court feels comfortable in saying this is appropriate. So durable general financial, that's the big focus there. And this one will help in terms of being able to, again, manage of your affairs, your assets and things while you're incapacitated. The counterpart to that, which we've discussed just ever so briefly, is this healthcare power of attorney. And this one has nothing to do with money and things. It has everything to do about you. Thankfully, that means this document is one where we still want to have a level of trust, because I certainly want to make sure that the people who are making decisions about me when I'm incapacitated are making good, sound decisions, and that they're doing everything they can to put me in the best state of care that they possibly can. But at the same time, the potential for abuse is much lower with this one. The risk of self-interest that comes from money is not really present. And so I am often able to advise folk to have a longer backup list on this one. So like, for instance, with a regular durable general power attorney, we might say, let's put one, maybe two people, a first agent, a successor agent. But on a healthcare power of attorney, if you've got a lot of family members, let's use them. Let's make sure that we don't wind up in a scenario where, if number one and number two are unavailable, that we don't have a third person to call upon to start making decisions in some kind of emergency scenario. This document is also different from the general power of attorney in that it is not effective right from the get-go. And that makes sense because of what we're talking about, right? You wouldn't want, I wouldn't want my wife, for instance, going to a doctor on my behalf and describing some weird rash that I have or a pain in my side and trying to get some sort of a prescription. That just doesn't make any sense. I would go to the doctor and I would do that and describe those issues as long as I'm able to. But there can be a circumstance where, again, I'm incapacitated. And for the healthcare power of attorney, that's our trigger. When I become incapacitated, I'm in front of a doctor and they say, clearly, Adam can't make decisions right now. They're going to start looking elsewhere. Now, just like everything else, there is a statute that does discuss what the priority is of people that we look to for medical decisions. And usually these are emergency circumstances, not ongoing care. And it is a little bit odd depending on what your circumstances are. There are actually scenarios in which there may be a team of people in which you need to get a majority vote to make certain decisions. So we can still clarify, even though we have a statutory scheme where we look to go, it can still be very helpful to clarify, who those people are, who you want and to take advantage of this opportunity to think it through. Because what does this force you to do? It asks you to think, if I become incapacitated, who am I wanting to jump in and make these kinds of decisions for me? Another key difference between the healthcare power of attorney that manages you personally and a financial power of attorney is that the healthcare power of attorney does actually survive your passing away. So this means that this is where you would go to figure out things like autopsy, cremation, burial, donation of your body to science, whatever the case may be. Those kinds of decisions can be made by an agent, again, that you designate, that you trust, that you can talk to about during your lifetime and say, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. And they'll actually have the authority to do it, not just the ability to express your wishes to somebody and hope that they listen. So we're giving them the power to accomplish the kinds of things that you would want to see happen later. Both of these documents essentially can set up the potential for the appointment of a guardian, because there can be, as unfortunate it is, circumstances in which we still need a guardian. We've got a power of attorney in play and they're doing the best they can, but for different reasons, they may still need further court authority to accomplish certain tasks. But what you've done is you've simplified the guardianship, because you've made it very clear, these are the people that I trust. There's no debate, there's no quandary, there's no wondering. It's pretty straightforward. At least that's what we kind of hope for. Certainly in America, we love our litigiousness, and we will give people the opportunity to make claims and to argue. But this gives a very heavy presumption that can be hard to overcome. So if you want to really make sure that the people that you trust, you can do nothing better to help set them up than to take the time and draft these documents and put it to writing. Our last one here is this advanced directive, a living will. And so again, it uses that word living. And this one is actually used while you are alive. And it says will, but it's not like a will in the form that we've talked about before, like a last will and testament. No, this is more like your expressed desire. Again, directive is a helpful word here. But what we're doing is we're saying, what do we do in a very limited circumstance that you become incapacitated, and our medical professionals know 99.9% certainty there's nothing that we can do to really get you out of that incapacity, nothing that we can do to improve your situation. This can be your comatose type scenario where the only reason that you are still living is because we have the mechanisms to pump lungs and your heart and things of that sort. It can be a disease that you've contracted that we don't have a cure for, and that has limited your ability to actually express your desires, because that's key. Anytime you can pop up and say, this is what I want, that controls. But if the situation is such that you can't, and again, we know that you're passing away in a short period of time, this would be an application. Or it can at times apply to the situation of cognitive mental loss, dementia, Alzheimer's, severe senility, where again, you're not really present with us. And so if one of those circumstances arises, again, you can't express what you want to do, and the doctors know that prolonged medical procedure is not going to be beneficial to you, you may elect using this document to say, I just want my doctors to kind of take a hands-off approach. We cannot, and in North Carolina at least, do a proactive ending of life. We can't speed that process up, but you do have the option of saying, I want to ride the wave. I just want to go. I want to have a natural death is another term that some people will use for this. And so if that's something that's important to you, is to not belabor the inevitable. This is where you would say that, because the Hippocratic Oath and our general legal presumption and medical presumptions are that we are going to expend every resource and possibility to keep a person living. And whether that's in a comfortable, well, I mean, we always try and strive for comfort, but whether that's in a condition that you might want to be prolonged in, like a comatose, et cetera, we still will strive for that. So this is your chance to sort of reverse that. If that notion rubs against your feathers, is not something that sounds desirable to you, you don't have to do one of these at all. And sometimes people will do them and expressly state that they want to be kept going no matter what. Put in a cryogenic state and floating around the state of Earth, and just, until we can figure something out, whatever. But still, this document, that's the purpose of it. So it's very limited. It does not do anything other than that. It doesn't give a person authority. It just directs to your doctors how to behave in that very specific circumstance. So with having said all that, those are the types of things that you have at your disposal as an individual to try and prepare for the unanticipated. This is your spare tire. This is your first aid kit, your roadside assistance call, giving your attorney a buzz. And so these are certain types that would supplement with the kind of work that Maria does. And so we want to make sure that you have an understanding of those. And so at any time you are able to, call myself and Maria at our respective offices, depending on what your circumstances are, you may go one or the other and start having conversations like what we've discussed here today of, I just want to know, what should I have in place when I go on this, as I'm on this trip? You're already on it. And so we want to be as prepared as we possibly can. So with that being said, I'm going to look over here at our comments for a moment and see if we have any comments or questions for that people would like to have addressed. And so certainly we've got about 8 minutes here. We can go a little bit over if we need to, but if anybody's been holding off on asking questions, this would be a great time to chime in and throw those out there so that we can try and address them. But Maria, I guess maybe kind of circle back to you here for a moment. Any additional thoughts, or has maybe I was talking, if there were things that kind of popped into your head that perhaps you had wanted to say before, or maybe kind of echo back on. If not, that's okay. But so putting you on the spot a little bit. But yeah, Maria, any additional thoughts in terms of what we discussed so far today?
Yeah, actually, to kind of come in on the end of Adam's component of this talk today, one of the things that I strongly encourage my clients to do is, once they have met with an estate attorney, once these wonderful documents are crafted and ready for you to use, it is important to circle back to your finances.
Yeah.
For example, if you've put a trust in place, what Adam has done has set you up for that trust to work. But if we don't talk and get your beneficiaries updated, or transfer this account that you want to be in the trust, it's not complete. And so, Adam, I don't know if you have other comments on that, but I think it's a big topic where sometimes people feel like they're done, and there are other components that still need to happen.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, you are absolutely correct. That's a great point. And that's certainly something that at our firm we want to hear from folk. Do you already have a financial advisor that we can communicate with? Try to make sure that we have authorization to go back and forth between each other. Both of our professions believe very strongly in confidentiality, and so it's really important to make that clear. Who we're working with, and to open up the lines of communication, because a very natural next step after the completion of our documents is going to be a discussion of beneficiary designations and account titles, because all those things are going to have an effect on the actual practical of how things play out. It's not uncommon for me to have conversations about things like retirement accounts, or investment accounts, and how those things are insurance policies that I really don't set them up. I don't maintain them. I don't run them. But I understand that from a back end, as an example, life insurance policies, they are going to be controlled by that beneficiary designation, not your will, not your trust. And so if they say that it goes to your former spouse, that's where it's going to go. And so if you haven't updated that, that's going to be a big deal. And it doesn't matter what I put in your will, it won't change that beneficiary designation. So that's got to be reviewed. It's got to be looked at. And so, yeah, we definitely want to have a hands-on follow-up and make sure that the whole comprehensive plan is done right, because it's very much a collaborative process. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I'm looking over at our chat box, and it looks like we have a quiet crowd today. And so I'm not seeing any questions, and that's okay. This webinar is going to be available online. And so there will be links made for that at a different date. And so we certainly encourage, and at the very beginning of the chat box today, I took the liberty, and there's some of this information that's been put out, but the website for Hopley, Williams, and Hannah, as well as the website for Maria's Edward Jones page, so that you can find contact information, other forms of resources, materials, just for your benefit and follow up. And so I encourage folks to take the time to circle around with those things. I think both Maria and I could probably talk for a really long time, longer than we have today, but it really helps to narrow down our conversations when we have individual folk with individual circumstances, so that it makes it more meaningful to you. So if that's something that you're interested in, please don't hesitate to reach out. Yeah, Maria, and any final thoughts or yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate being part of the conversation today, Adam. Thanks very much, and thanks to everybody who attended. I agree. I think there's but so much that can really be addressed in the broader topic. But I echo Adam that if there's anything that you'd particularly like to talk about at an individual level, I'm absolutely available for consultations to do so. We're still meeting everyone virtually here, so we can always set up an opportunity to do that at your convenience. And again, just appreciate everybody's time today.
That's right. Yeah, changing with the times and moving forward. So yeah, absolutely making advantage of technological resources. So everybody, thank you again so much. And with that, I will sign us off and hope everybody to have a wonderful afternoon and weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.